Today we're looking at more details about TICO. But first, yesterday we were talking about an airline called Lynx, L-Y-N-X, and it's new. It's a Canadian airline. And so I left yesterday's class and I read more about this airline. And it's always exciting when something like that happens in the industry because, like I said yesterday, the more competition there is, the more competitive pricing can be. So yeah, they're a new discount airline. It seems that they're based in Calgary, judging by the website, and they do have lots of job openings. As it's a new airline, that would make sense, but based in Calgary. So if I know some people are open to relocating after school is finished, that could be an option for you. For now, I think I saw they fly to 5 places and brand new fleet of aircraft, 737 Boeings. So kind of exciting, just domestic flights for now. And we'll see where it goes. I mean, Swoop started off pretty small too, and now they go internationally, they go across the country. And yeah, it's exciting stuff. Good. So, like I said, today we're talking a bit more about TICO and the details around advertising. Please let me know if at any point if my microphone stops working. I'll unplug my headset and just use the computer sound, but it seems that yesterday during class in my Destination Americas class, it was malfunctioning just a little bit. Okay, so jumping right into some TICO information. So what are TICO's responsibilities? We talked about this a little bit yesterday, but we'll go into more detail today. So TICO's responsibility includes registrations, consumer protection, complaint resolution, government liaison. So most of those are already, they explain themselves, like registration, TICO requires that people are registered. Consumer protection, they protect the consumer. They help resolve complaints. Government liaison, it's kind of like acting as a go-between between the government and the law, the Travel Industry Act, and the industry itself, travel agencies and suppliers. Consumer awareness, making sure that consumers are making an informed decision when they buy travel. Industry awareness, consumer compensation, so getting money back if something goes wrong, and ethical conduct, making sure everybody's doing the right thing when it comes to operating a business and not trying to cheat people out of money or not follow the rules in some kind of way. So to start it off, let's look at just a couple definitions. First, we already looked at the definition of a travel agency. This is a travel agent. It's pretty much the same. A person who sells to consumers travel services provided by another supplier. So a travel agent is not someone who owns an agency. It's not someone who operates an agency. It's someone who just works there. Like I was a travel agent. I worked at a desk at Lime Ridge Mall and people came in and I sold them trips. But I didn't own the place. So travel agent does not own their office or own their business. They sell travel to consumers. In other words, that's what it says there in the definition. And within that definition is something that says travel services. And what that is transportation, accommodation, or any other service for the use of a traveler, tourist, or sightseer. So it doesn't have to be a flight. That's a lot of what it is booking flights, but it could also just be booking a transfer for someone. It could be booking anything really that has to do with travel, any of those sectors of the travel industry. Those are all travel services. So that kind of explains what you see within that definition of a travel agent. So what does it mean to become required or to become registered with TICO? What's required? So first, remember yesterday we talked about paying a deposit? This happens before that. You have to complete a registration form. So fill in the blanks of your business and then pay $3,000. Then you put your security deposit of $10,000 down. And you have to provide a balance sheet, like a bank statement that shows that you have $5,000 in working capital. So just $5,000 left over to operate your business once everything else is paid for. Then you need to show that you have trust accounting. And remember yesterday we talked about trust accounting. At a travel agency, you have two bank accounts. You have the trust account and the general account. And again, yesterday I said, but just to repeat myself, the general account is for everything except people's money, travelers' payments. Travelers' payments go into the trust account. So somebody comes in, buys a trip, that money goes in the trust account. The general account is for things like paying rent and paying salary and everything that's not client's money. What you pay for from the trust account are the client's trips themselves. You have to have a permanent address in Ontario to be registered with TICO. And you have to have a qualified supervisor or manager who meets TICO education standards. And that doesn't really say anywhere in there a minimum of 1 year or minimum of 2 years experience. It just says that they need adequate experience. And lastly, to register your business as a travel agency with TICO, you need a criminal background check and credit check. Now that is to register a travel agency as a business. If you want to open a travel agency and operate and own one. If you want to be a travel agent, like if you want to work at an agency, this is not necessary. The only thing that's necessary is to write your TICO exam. So don't be scared if you want to be a travel agent. You don't have to pay a deposit of $10,000 and all of that. That's only to open your own travel agency. But to work at one, just to be a travel agent, you just need to write your TICO exam. This is in order to open your own agency. So who funds TICO? In other words, who gives them money? Who gives money to the compensation fund? Who finances that? It all means the same thing. Who gives money to that? Who funds it? Who finances it? All means who gives them money. It's retail agencies, so travel agencies, and travel wholesalers, so tour operators and suppliers. When it comes to renewing your registration, as a travel agency, you need to do this every year. And to do that, you have to pay some money depending on how much you sold the previous year. So the fee is based on the amount of sales processed. And the fee can be anywhere from $300 to $1,800, depending on how much business you've sold. And then there's additional fees on top of that that each branch might have. So if you have a travel agency that's quite successful, and maybe you have 5 locations, one in Toronto, one in London, one in Thunder Bay, then you'll have to pay a registration renewal fee for each of those. Again, if you're selling travel in Ontario, you have to be registered either as a travel agent or your agency needs to be registered, actually both. The Travel Industry Act, which is the law, requires registration of all travel agencies and wholesalers with a presence in Ontario. We talked about that yesterday. So if you want to sell travel in Ontario, you have to be registered with TICO. whether that's a travel agency or a travel agent. The Act, the law, sets out clear rules that have to be followed and met when advertising travel services and making a sale. And the reason is to ensure that customers are given all of the facts so that they are informed and they can make a good decision. They're not being tricked. They have all the information they need to purchase that travel. So a couple more definitions for you here. Full disclosure. That is giving complete information about any matter that the other party should know in deciding to buy. Full disclosure is also known as telling the whole truth. So full disclosure is telling the client everything they might need to know before they make a decision to buy something. And representation is a presentation of fact. That could be made in person, electronically, or in print in order to induce someone to act or enter into a contract. In other words, that means if you go through that individually in person, that's when someone's in your office, they're in front of you, you have to represent the product properly. You have to tell them the facts. Electronically, so maybe that's by email or in print. So this could be advertising as well. And then down at the bottom, so includes oral presentations, which I do really frequently at Contiki. I go to different colleges, I go to travel agencies, and I make presentations about the Contiki product. While I'm doing that, I need to be accurate. I need to represent the product properly instead of tricking people into doing something. Same with advertisements. There's lots of rules around how you can advertise travel. Brochures, websites, it all falls under representation. Are you representing the travel product properly? As a travel retailer, we have certain responsibilities. So full disclosure, telling the whole truth. Representation, oral and written. Advertising, printed materials and brochures. So that's all something we've talked about just now on the other slide. But invoices and receipts. You need to have complete invoices. We will look at some examples. I don't think today, but when it comes to that, we'll take a look at a real invoice from one of my trips and receipts. So these are part of the responsibilities of a travel agency. And this next one is really, really important. So maybe put a star there. Notification of changes to travel arrangements. What that means is, if I have a client who has booked a trip and let's say that Sunwing. They booked a Sunwing package and they're going to the Caribbean. Let's say they're going to Cuba just for fun. So we have a couple, 2 people, traveling Toronto to Varadero for 1 week, and it's an all-inclusive Sunwing package. So as a travel agent, Sunwing contacts me, and they say there has been a schedule change. Instead of leaving at 5 p.m. from Toronto, you're leaving the same day, but now you're leaving at 10 a.m. So 7 hours earlier. So at that point, the client does not know about the change because I booked it as the travel agent. So I am that supplier's, I'm Sunwing's point of contact. So they email me and they say, there's a schedule change. You're leaving 7 hours earlier. Immediately, when I see that information, I have to tell the client right away, as soon as possible. If I don't, it's my responsibility because the client doesn't know that their schedule has changed. So they might show up to the airport at 2 p.m. for their 5 p.m. flight, but they've missed their flight. Their flight is already down in Cuba. So that's a change, and it happens frequently. In that case, it's a schedule change, but other changes can happen. Maybe at that same resort, The flights are fine. There's no schedule change for the flight anymore. But at that same resort, maybe half of the resort is under construction and 3 of the 4 pools are closed. Sunwing will email me as the travel agent and tell me that. I need to tell the client right away. So it's my responsibility to tell the client about any changes that there might be to their travel arrangements. And again, we've talked about trust accounting. That is the travel retailers, so the travel agency's responsibility. When it comes to advertising travel, TICO has certain rules. And we will look at some sample advertisements and kind of analyze whether they're correct or incorrect, and if they are incorrect, why. But first, you need to learn the rules of advertising travel. So guidelines for advertising and price when it comes to travel, this is controlled by TICO, based on the Travel Industry Act. So based on the law, this is the guidelines from TICO. So the price has to reflect the total amount to be paid. If you're advertising a trip, remember yesterday I used an example about Hawaii, saying that your trip is $300. You can't advertise that if it's the base fare. The base fare is the amount before taxes. You can't advertise that. You have to advertise the full amount that will be paid. And you can do that in different ways. You can say total amount to be paid is $600, or you can say, come to Hawaii for $300 plus $300 taxes. Mostly these days, people will just put it in one final price. It's just easier for you as the retailer, as the travel agent. It's easier for the client to understand. So you can do it a few ways. Total price, including all fees and service charges. That is really common. As a base price plus a total for all fees, that was like come to Hawaii for $300 plus $300 in tax. Or as a base price plus a list of fees, that is less common because as a client, I don't want to see $300 plus $100 in fuel surcharge, $25 in airport tax. Like it just looks like you're paying way more than you need to. So that's not as common. But you do need to advertise the total price. The only exception is GST, but we'll talk about that in a moment. The advertisement, ad is the short word for that. So the advertisement, the ad, must include a description of the travel services being offered. Is it a flight only? Is it a flight and a hotel package? Or $300 to Hawaii? That sounds wonderful. Or in reality, $600. Is that a flight? Is that a flight and a hotel? And then you need a statement about further information. What that means is just as simple as saying, further information can be found on our website, or ask your travel agent for more details. If you look at travel advertising in a newspaper or online in a newsletter, you'll always see that, a statement about further information. And it could take the form of different things. Like I said, more information in our brochure, or more information is available with your travel agent. You'll see that statement. The price has to be applicable at the time, which means it needs to be available at the time that you're advertising. And it has to be in Canadian dollars, unless it's otherwise stated somewhere very clearly. The reason is that other countries use the dollar, we use dollars, not our dollar, of course, and that's the problem. That's in advertising. So if you see a price that's $300, you might think that's wonderful. And then you look more closely and you see it's in US dollars. That means it will be more in Canadian dollars. And then your suppliers need to be told to the client through the advertisement. If it is an air-only ticket to get to Hawaii, you need to say which airline. Is it Air Canada bringing you there? Is it Sunwing? Is it a package with a certain tour operator. So that all needs to be in the advertisement as well. So far we have the full price, the description of the travel services, a statement about more information. The price needs to be in Canadian, and you need to disclose, which means you need to tell people, the air carrier, the airline, or which hotel you're using, etc. It has to show your travel agency address. It has to show whether your airfare you're advertising is round trip or is it a one-way ticket. It has to include your TICO registration number, and your advertising has to include a reference to more information, like we saw in the last slide. I hinted at this before, but the only thing that doesn't need to be showed is PST or GST, but now we have combined those two in Ontario to create HST. So you can say, these prices include all taxes and fees except HST or GST, PST, which on an airline ticket is really small because it's only being based off of one of the taxes. You don't really need to know that, but a $1,000 ticket could have less than $20 in HST, which is much, much, much less than 13%. And the reason is the HST is only being charged on one of your taxes on that ticket. But that's a story for another day. So here's some examples. Let's take a look and analyze these. This is an example of a TICO or an advertisement that follows all of the rules. So first you see that it shows the agency address, 123 Anywhere Street in Toronto. Describes the travel product. It says air only. So where are we going? Book now and save. Going to Cuba for $589. It shows our departure dates. Orlando for $478 and Amsterdam for $658. And then down here it says air only. Perfect. Now I know what I'm getting for that price. It also says that prices include all taxes, fees, and charges except GST. Okay, we're allowed to do that. That's fine. It shows which airline it is. In this case, it's made up. It's called ABC Airline. And it does say round trip. So it will bring us there and back. TICO registration number is right here. It's a fake registration number like this whole ad. And it says that more information is available. More information available from your travel agent. Okay, so not only that, but it does give us more information. It does say prices are valid for new bookings only, because maybe somebody already booked a flight to Orlando on July 8th, and now they see this ad and it's cheaper. So that they don't get that new price, it's only for new bookings. That's what that means. And for dates shown only. You all know now that there are different classes of service, different booking classes, I should say. And I don't mean business class and economy class. I mean the letters, like Y class is your most expensive economy ticket. And so on certain days, only certain booking classes will remain available. So that's why these prices are specific to only these dates. The other thing it shows is that fares are non-refundable, and that's an airline rule. It's not really a travel agency rule. That tells me that it's not Y class. If you're paying for Y class tickets, usually you get more flexible changes and cancellations. You might not have to pay as much to change or cancel because you're paying full fare, economy class. So in this case, the fares are non-refundable. If I buy that ticket, I'm stuck with it. If I cancel, I don't get a refund. Usually, most airlines will give you a credit that you can rebook with, but not a refund. Okay, next one. Looks slightly different, but it still follows the rules. The main difference is in the pricing. And this just, to me, looks more complicated. It looks more cloudy. It looks cluttered. It's not easy to read. So this is why I prefer the whole price in one easy to read single price, not plus tax. So this gives you a bracket. Because we're looking at a bigger period of time, July to September, the price will change. So Cuba is now $3.99 to $5.49. And then your tax, because these prices are slightly different, the tax is going to be slightly different. So it doesn't give you a firm indication that this is what your trip will cost, but it does start a conversation. It gets people to come into your office and say, "Ooh, Cuba, I'd like to go there in August, let's say. How much would it be?" And then that starts the conversation. Now let's look at a different ad that is riddled with mistakes. It's missing a lot of information. So maybe in your chat box, you can let me know what is wrong with this ad, with this advertisement. What's missing? That's right. I've got some direct messages, but I'll wait a little longer so everybody has a chance to write something if they'd like. So if I remember correctly, I can only see the first thing to come next in my PowerPoint, but I think there's about 6 or 7 things wrong with this, based on what we just said, what we just looked at on the last several slides. So there's in the public message, as well as some of our private messages, no TICO number. Yes, absolutely. No TICO number, that's a big problem. Another private message I got was no agency name. Well, I guess we have the name. Well, it's hard to say because John Doe Travel, that could be the name of the travel agency, or maybe it's just the person's name. It's hard to say, but certainly we have no agency address. Doesn't say if it's one way or return or which suppliers. Yes, that's also true. Are we just flying to Edmonton on a one-way ticket or do we get to come back? Doesn't say who's bringing us there either, which supplier it is. And if it's air only, yeah, good. Very good. Without proper documentation, without a visa, or proof that you're coming back to Canada, it is not a good idea to fly one way into a country. I had a friend when I was working at the travel agency who booked online. She did not book with me. And she told me that she's going to England and she's living there for a while. And I said, great. And I said, do you have a visa? And she said, no. And I said, okay, do you have a round trip ticket? And she said, no, I bought a one-way ticket. I said, you will have problems getting into England because you show up with a one-way ticket and you cannot prove that you're leaving the country at some point. So they didn't let her on the plane because they didn't have proof that she would be leaving Europe. So bad idea. If it is a one-way ticket and let's say you fly one way to Mexico, you need to prove that you either have a visa to stay there or that you have a return ticket somewhere. Otherwise you'll have a hard time. So yeah, does it say round trip? Does it say one way? Good. These are all good observations. Let's go through the list of what's missing officially. No T's and C's, which is our industry way of saying terms and conditions. There's no fine print, little text. Prices are misleading. It doesn't say one way or round trip, air only or package. We already covered that in the chat. Taxes are not specified. It doesn't say how much taxes will be. It just says that they're extra. So that's not allowed. No agency address, no TICO number. We got that in the chat. No description of travel services, like which airline it is. Again, that came up in the chat. No statement that further information is available either. It doesn't say more information online at our website or more information from your travel agent. Good, so we got lots of those. Well done, considering you just learned the rules. Well done in putting them to practice. So full disclosure, again, that's telling the whole truth, telling all of the information that somebody might want to know before they buy something. So the agent must disclose. Again, there's that word that means tell someone. Disclose means to tell someone something. They have to disclose. They have to tell the client, the PAX, total price. The cancellation and refund policies. Every air ticket will have a different rule attached to it. Maybe it's 100% non-refundable. Maybe it's 50% non-refundable. And that means if I cancel, 50% of what I paid, I will not get back. So as a travel agent, I need to tell my clients what those rules are. Terms and conditions of the sale. Is there any other fine print I should know about? As a travel agent, every time I sell a trip, I must, required by law, I must offer travel insurance. If someone says, no, thank you, I don't want travel insurance, they have to sign a waiver. And sometimes just signing that waiver makes people say, okay, I don't want to sign this, I'll just buy the insurance. And the waiver says, I understand the risks of travel, I'm declining insurance. Maybe it will even say why, like I have coverage on my credit card, or I have travel insurance through work benefits. And then you sign it and you say, I understand that I'm on the hook if something goes wrong. And just that waiver sometimes makes people want to buy the insurance. So every time I make a sale, I have to offer medical insurance and cancellation insurance. We talk about insurance a bit more towards the end of the semester, I think week 9 or something like that. And then what sort of travel documentation is required? And by documents, in this case, in this class, I don't mean tickets for the flight or vouchers for a hotel. Travel documentation refers to passports, visas, health requirements. Do you need vaccines to go to a certain country? That's what we mean by travel documentation in this class. So as an agent, I need to disclose those requirements. Maybe you need a visa to go to China. And I don't mean the credit card. I mean a special stamp or a special sticker, special permission to go to a country. And so if someone is traveling to a place, you always have to check, do they need a visa? How long is their passport valid for? You need to check all of those things as a travel agent. And the standard of accommodation and services. Sometimes it's easy. You just say on your invoice, terms and conditions, that 5 stars in Canada will mean something different than 5 stars in Cuba, for example. So you need to tell them the standard of accommodation and services that they'll get, and whether you're charging a consultation fee. So I believe we mentioned service fees already. Yes, we did. I showed you a picture of my friend Lenita. And so if I am charging a service fee to make a booking, I need to tell that to the client as well. I can't just hide it in the price that I'm charging them. So that's all happening before the sale, during the sale, really. You need to tell everybody, your clients, all of the information before they buy. But what happens after they buy a trip and before they travel? They don't just disappear. You haven't just made the sale and made your money. You have to follow certain rules that happen after the sale, but before they travel. And that includes invoicing requirements. An invoice is a document that outlines all of the details. Oh, here they are. Agency details. So what travel agency did they purchase from? What's the address? How can they contact me? TICO registration number, etc. Customer details. So I'll need on the invoice on this document, what is the customer's name, their address, who's traveling with them. And when I say their name, I mean their name that's on their passport. Travel service details. What are they buying? Is it an all-inclusive package? Is it just a flight? If it's a flight, are there connections? What is the connection city? What times? All of that needs to be on the invoice. And payment details. First of all, have they paid? Is this just a quote? Or if it's an invoice, how much money do they owe? Did they pay maybe a $200 deposit? That's on their invoice and it shows how much they still owe. How did they pay? Was it cash? Was it credit card? Was it debit? That's all on your invoice as well. So after every sale, every time you take money from a passenger, you have to issue an invoice. You have to give them a document that says how much they paid and all of that stuff. So you keep track. And once again, you have to immediately tell people if something has changed that will affect their booking. All right, so maybe there was, like I said, construction at a hotel or a schedule change to their flight. Quite often the airlines and suppliers will contact you first as the travel agent because they might not even have contact details for the client. They might just know how to contact you. So you need to tell them immediately that something has changed on their trip. And after the sale, but before they travel, you will get documents. Documents are usually ready 2 to 3 weeks before the departure date. And part of my routine when I sold a trip, I would go into my Outlook calendar, Microsoft Outlook calendar, and put a reminder for myself 3 weeks before their departure date. And then I would go in and see that their documents would be ready. So let's say that Sunwing trip down to Cuba, I would go to the Sunwing website, type in their booking number, and up comes their tickets and their itinerary and all of the documents they need. I would print that out and give it to the client or email it to them. But before I would give the clients the documents, you would have to look at all of the details. Make sure their names are spelt correctly. I've mentioned before that if one letter is wrong, they can be denied boarding. They can say, no, you're not allowed on this airplane. There's a spelling mistake in your name. Dates, verify which date they're going, which date they're coming back, all of the details of the documents. You need to, it's the travel agent's responsibility to review them. You don't just give the documents to the clients and say, tell me if something's wrong. It's the travel agent's responsibility to do that. So that all happens after the sale, but before travel. That's what the travel agent is responsible for. The compensation fund, that is, so it's a compensation fund organized through TICO. So the Travel Industry Compensation Fund is what it's called, and it protects consumers who book through Ontario registered travel agencies. And it would protect them for a few different things. If they don't receive their travel services, like if they don't get what they pay for, because if the registrant goes bankrupt, whether that's a tour wholesaler or a travel agent, or the failure of an airline or cruise line supplier. If I book a trip with a cruise line and they go out of business, then I can get money back from the compensation fund. It's kind of like an insurance, but through TICO. And who decides whether it meets the requirements for a refund or what they call compensation, the word on the left here, that's getting money back? It's the board of directors of TICO. So a little bit more about the compensation fund. There's that word again, financed. So who gives the fund money? It is registered travel agencies and registered travel wholesalers. It's not the clients. The clients don't pay into TICO. They don't pay into the compensation fund. That is a question you will see again on quizzes like next week's or on exams. Compensation fund is financed by TICO registered travel agencies and travel wholesalers, those two groups of people. And they pay whatever is greater of the following: $25 or 15 cents per $1,000 in sales plus tax twice a year. So that's where they get their money from, is from travel agencies and travel wholesalers. Now, still talking about the compensation fund, this type of, they don't call it insurance, but it's a safety net for consumers. When you try to get money from the compensation fund, it's called a claim, making a claim, just like with insurance. So there's a standard claim, and that's a claim for travel services that were paid for. So I've booked a trip to Cuba, I've paid for that trip, but not provided. Maybe the agency went out of business. Maybe the airline went out of business. Sunwing, in our example, maybe they went out of business. So now I need to make a claim from the compensation fund to get money. So I will go to TICO and say, my airline went out of business. I want my money back. It's going to be based on the original cost of travel services provided, which makes sense. How much did I pay to go to Cuba? Not how much is the value of that trip now. It's how much did I pay? Because prices change all the time in the world of travel. You'll get a maximum refund of up to $5,000 per person. So if your trip costs more than that, then you'll only get up the 5,000. Maximum per event is 5 million. So if, let's say, Sunwing went out of business, all of the passengers who are trying to get money from the compensation fund, $5 million will be split between all of them to a maximum of $5,000 per person. But if $5 million split between all of those people is less than 5,000, that's what you would get. So maximum refund is 5,000 per person, or 5 million per event that could affect many people. Like if 5 million people were affected, you'd get $1 each. Okay, so it's whatever is whatever matches. And for a standard claim, this is important. For filing a standard claim, you have up to 6 months to file that claim, to say, I want my money back after the event happened. So after Sunwing went bankrupt, after they closed, you have 6 months to get your money back, to file that claim. And who can do it? A consumer, an agent, a wholesaler, they can all make standard claims. So there's the two types of claims. There's standard claims. You have to do that within 6 months, and all of the other details are there. And then you have something called a trip completion expense claim. So this happens, and it's during your trip. If something happens, like let's say now I'm in Cuba, Sunwing goes out of business, and I have to get back to Canada. That's a trip completion expense claim because I need to complete my trip. I need to finish my trip. So a claim for reasonable expenses incurred to complete a trip when a customer has begun a trip and can't complete it due to the failure of a TICO registrant. So that's what we're talking about in our Sunwing example. We need to complete our trip. I need to get now from Cuba back to Canada, but I can't use Sunwing because they're closed. So maybe I need to find a new airline, but it needs to be a reasonable expense. I can't book a first class ticket home. I can't find an airline that will fly me from Cuba into Mexico, and then from there into Los Angeles, and then from there to Toronto. You know, it needs to be the cheapest possible reasonable expense. This is what's another thing that makes it different. So that first thing is that it completes a trip. So you're already on your trip. Standard claim is your trip hasn't happened yet. The other difference is that your standard claim, remember, is 6 months. Trip completion expense claim, you have 3 months to file for that claim. So that's an important difference. If you're submitting a claim for trip completion, you have 3 months after the event, but a standard claim is 6 months. So that's all to say if what you're claiming is covered. But what is not covered? What can you not get money back for? So, failure of an out-of-province tour operator, wholesaler, or travel agent. So let's stick with the same example. We're going to Cuba, to Veradero, and in Veradero, I have booked a tour, a day tour, to bring me to Havana to see the capital city. I booked it in Cuba. Maybe I booked it online before I got there, who knows? But it's a Cuban tour operator. So if they go out of business, TICO will not cover me because they're not based in Ontario. They are based in Cuba. Another thing that they will not cover are taxes, insurance, costs of alternate travel, discount certificates, vouchers, prizes. In other words, if you get a trip as a prize, let's say they're sending me to Cuba because I won a trip on Instagram, which does happen. They will not give me money back for that trip because I didn't pay for it. I got it as a prize. Same with a voucher. Maybe I won a $500 voucher from some sort of contest, and now I'm trying to make a claim. They will not give me that money back because I didn't pay for it. I got it as a prize or as a voucher, paid for it with a voucher. Non-refundable payment amounts if cancellation of travel services is by the traveler. So as a traveler, Sunwing, going down to Cuba, maybe I canceled the trip because I didn't want to go anymore. Well, I'm not going to get money back for that because the Sunwing airline didn't go bankrupt. There's nothing wrong with Sunwing at this point in this example. I just didn't want to go anymore. They won't give me money back for that. And lastly, services that were available but not used by the traveler. Same idea. You could say if the service of the flight was still going to Cuba and I didn't use it, I'm not covered. But more specifically, because we already used that example, let's say I flew to Veradero in an all-inclusive package. So it includes my air, my hotel, transfer, meals, drinks. But so I checked in at that hotel, but I didn't stay there. The reason I bought the ticket was because it was really cheap as a package. But I didn't stay at the hotel. I went down the street and stayed for the week in a really nice hotel. And then I came back on the last day to the resort and checked out. I didn't use the hotel. In this case, I used the flight, I used the transfer, but I didn't use the hotel. But I can't get money back for that because the hotel was available to me. I just chose not to use it. So that's what's not covered in these claims, whether it's a standard claim or a trip completion claim. TECO's role in complaints. So the last thing you want to do is get TECO involved in complaints. I mean, that's like going to the principal at a school, you know, it's the last step you want to take. If you can, it's best to listen to complaints and resolve them at the travel agency, at the travel agent level. You don't want to involve more people than is necessary. We will talk about complaints and how to handle them in a future class, but TECO's role in complaints, when complaints do reach TECO, they're responsible for complaint resolution, which means they're responsible for resolving the complaints. So TECO has a complaints process that attempts to resolve disputes between travelers and registrants. And registrants means people who are registered with TECO. So it could be a wholesaler, it could be a travel agent. It also has a complaints committee that deals with any complaints made against TECO. So I'm complaining about TECO, that goes to a complaints committee. Like I said, we talk about complaints more in the semester a bit later on, how to deal with them before you involve TECO. So here's just a list of T's and C's that I found from a Flight Centre advertisement. I believe it was on their website, but this shows us a lot of information that TECO would want to see. And yes, this follows all of the TECO rules. So we have the TECO logo, and then all of the terms and conditions. Most people ignore this, but as travel professionals, as travel agents specifically, you'll need to read terms and conditions. So get used to it. Maybe pick up a travel brochure from a travel agency next time you're out, or go to a website and read the terms and conditions. You need to be familiar with those. So it tells us prices are in Canadian. All prices include taxes and fees. So whatever we see is what we pay. Travels in economy class, and so on. It tells you all of that information. It does not say what the airline is. Maybe that was shown up in the advertisement. This is only the terms and conditions. So probably it said something like $700, fly to Cuba with Sunwing. That will be listed in the advertisement. This is just the terms and conditions. And more importantly, you see the TECO registration number. Alrighty. Couple things to talk about before we leave. There is a TECO assignment. Again, I've already received one completed, so thank you for that. You don't have to feel you need to submit it really quickly because the assignments are based on what we talk about usually in the second class. So now it might be easier for you to complete the assignment. But it is a TECO assignment. It's on Canvas. There's an activity this week, and next week, at the beginning of class 1, we'll have our second quiz, and that will cover the TECO materials that we saw today and some things that come up in the assignment. So your assignment is based on the TECO training manual, which you can find in the description of the assignment, or on Canvas under the week 3 module. It will say TECO training manual. You click it, it downloads a PDF that's really big, and that's what you will use to study for your TECO exam as well. So this activity, this assignment, will familiarize you with what is where. How do I read the manual? How do I use it? I have changed this to say Saturday because I did say Friday earlier and then I kept going back and forth. Usually I say Saturdays, but I guess the date from last year coincided with with Friday this year. So email me by Saturday with your semester groups, member names, and student numbers. If you're doing your project by yourself, that's fine. Just let me know. So before you go, I'll just show you the Canvas page where you can find that assignment. Of course, you should know this because you're familiar now with Canvas, but here's week 3. This is our lesson we looked at today. There will be a Zoom recording posted after class. There's your TICO training manual. It's the PDF. It's a big file, lots of pages, and then your TICO assignment. And then next week you have your quiz number 2 at the beginning of our first class. And after that, I believe you have 20 minutes to do that one. Yeah, 20 minutes. And after that, we'll have our regular class.